Welcome to the lecture on Proverbs. We're dealing with a purely wisdom book here in the book of Proverbs. And the name comes from the Hebrew term mashal, which means to be like or represent something. And there are plenty of Proverbs where this is like that, or ones where this is not like that, that sort of thing. So likeness or comparison. This is what's happening here. And so these are the likenesses or the proverbs of Shalomo, which is Hebrew for Solomon. There are other biblically known proverbs in other places. Acts 7:22, 1 Kings 4:30, Isaiah 19:11 and 12. There's quite a few in other places, just in individual statements. So they can be found elsewhere. And we talked about ancient Near Eastern wisdom literature, and so they can be found in Sumeria, Assyria, Babylon, Egypt. These proverbs are universal as far as their scope. Now, this book, of course, is Hebrew wisdom, and is presenting wisdom with a different focus, a focus where God is important, where relationship with Him is preeminent, and then others as well follows that. So wisdom is talked about in these statements in relationship to God and our relationship with Him. There are three Solomonic, as far as authorships, there's three Solomonic claims to authorship in 1:1, 10:1, 25:1. 25:1, it's actually talking about Hezekiah's day. They're compiling or collecting the proverbs that Solomon had written or spoken, and so they're collecting them compiling them into a larger document. And so that collection of it up to that point is at 250 years after the time of Solomon. Solomon wrote 3,000 proverbs according to 1 Kings 4:32, and there are 800 of them in the book of Proverbs. Solomon not only wrote, but collected, studied, arranged, according to Ecclesiastes 12:9. Wisdom sayings. Proverbs did exist before Solomon, because there are proverbial statements in Numbers 21:27 and 1 Samuel 24:13. So again, he is jumping into the mix. This is a genre of literature that precedes Solomon, but he's jumping in as well. Now, there are some other authors here, Agur and Lemuel, who are unknown, but they are in the text mentioned as well. There's no historical occasion. We would be guessing at the historical occasion here. And so it's not explicit because the statements are collected, pithy sayings, in other words, that are collected over time. As far as a contrast between other literature, if we want to contrast Psalms and Proverbs, Psalms would be the Christian on their knees. Proverbs would be the Christian on their feet. So Psalms in prayer, Proverbs in action, wisdom in action. Psalms are for the believer's devotions, and Proverbs for the daily walk. So it's a similar sort of thing. Psalms would be for the closet prayer, and Proverbs for the business place, home, family, and play. As far as the date, again, Solomonic times, of course, makes it United Monarchy, 10th century, and so that's what we're looking at for his Psalms, or Proverbs, excuse me. But you've got the time of David and Solomon then, you've got the time of Hezekiah with that collection we're talking about, and probably the time of Ezra as well, as far as a collection of these being pulled together. The purpose for the book is sage words for a wise walk in a sanctified life, a life set apart to God. Now, Ellison mentions a twofold purpose for the book of Proverbs. One, to teach and highlight the great benefits that accrue to all of us through a disciplined mind and a God-oriented way of life. And second, to warn of the great dangers that inevitably come when we don't follow these proverbs, when we don't follow wisdom. We follow passions and desires and that sort of thing. Proverbs 1 through 7 lists six purposes, to know wisdom and instruction, to receive teaching and right living, to help the simple become mature, to increase learning and skill, to understand hard sayings, because there are difficult sayings, and to learn the fear of the Lord. So these are the purposes within the book itself that they mention. There are so many key verses, key chapters in this book. It's hard to separate them out because there's so many good sayings that are helpful. 1:24 and following, calamity comes when you reject wisdom. 3:5-7, trust in the Lord, turn away from evil. The essence of wisdom and understanding, basically, is to turn away from evil, to fear the Lord. 3:19 and following, the Lord by wisdom founded the earth, by understanding he established the heavens, by his knowledge the deeps were broken up. So you have this, God is establishing wisdom, creating everything. You have in 6:16-19, the things that God hates. 6:16, there are 6 things the Lord hates. Yes, 7, which are an abomination to him. Haughty eyes, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked plans, feet that run rapidly to evil, a false witness who utters lies, and one who spreads strife among brothers. 8:22-31, we have this direct speech from personified wisdom, wisdom personified. Some want to look at this as the pre-incarnate Christ. It's not necessary to do that, but this definitely is a personified attribute of God as far as wisdom personified here in 8:22. When the wisdom speaks, the Lord possessed me at the beginning of his way, before his works of old, from everlasting I was established, from the beginning, from the earliest of times of the earth. So God establishes order and wisdom. 14, 12, and 13, there's a way that seems right to a man, but in the end its way is death. Even in laughter the heart may be pain, but the end of joy may be grief. It's just so many. Let's see. Pride goes before destruction. Proverbs 27, don't boast about tomorrow, for you don't know what a day may bring forth. Proverbs 28:13, don't hide your sins. Proverbs 29:1, a man who hardens himself to correction will be broken beyond remedy. Where there is no vision, the people are unrestrained. 29:18, 34 and following, the greatness and steadfastness of God, and the request to keep faithful to him. Proverbs 31, an excellent wife who can find, that great passage there. So many important and helpful proverbs and wise sayings. Key concepts here in the book, there's all sorts of things. Wisdom, sin, the tongue, and words we speak. Wealth, pride, idleness, love, pleasure, success, strong drink. How do we deal with these things? Evil companions, evil people, the fool, the whisperer, the talebearer, the speculator. Contrasts between God and man, between time and eternity, between truth and falsehood, between wealth and poverty, justice and injustice, pleasure versus misery, social relations, master versus servant, rich and poor, husband, wife, parent, child. How do we deal with these relationships? Folly, foolishness, gluttony, the family and child rearing. He who withholds his rod hates his son, but he who loves him disciplines him diligently. And the rod does not have to be in every instance a physical rod. It can be a timeout chair, we know, for little children. But discipline, the rod of discipline, a correction or accountability, that sort of thing. But you hate your child if you don't discipline them in some way and teach them an ordered life. Folly is bound up in the heart of a child, but discipline will drive it far from him. So those sorts of things. Key peoples, we've mentioned Yahweh God, wise man, the fool, wisdom personified. There are these antithesis proverbs. Faithful are the wounds of a friend, but deceitful are the kisses of an enemy. Because a friend, of course, is going to tell you the truth even when it hurts. An enemy, of course, is going to be spreading a net of flattery at your feet. And so these sorts of concepts are presented throughout. These antitheses, the comparisons. Don't forsake your own friend or your father's friend. Do not go to your brother's house in the day of calamity. Better is a neighbor who is near than a brother far away. Comparison. Imagery. He who digs a pit will fall into it. He who rolls a stone, it will come back on him. So the imagery of that rolling stone. A unit type of proverb. These are the Proverbs of Solomon in 10:1. A wise son, so that ending statement saying up to this point, Proverbs of Solomon, and so it ends a collection. At some point that was collected. Epigram 28:4-5. Those who forsake the law praise the wicked, but those who keep the law will strive with them. Evil men do not understand justice, but those who seek the Lord understand all things. There's a dramatic monologue when wisdom shouts in the streets in chapter 1. Not personification again, also in chapter 9. The fear of the Lord being so fundamental to wisdom. In 1:7, it's the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. Proverbs 15:33, the fear of the Lord is the instruction for wisdom, and before honor comes humility. So, there are 7 words translated in the book of Proverbs for fool. There's all sorts of different types of fools. For us, the one word does fairly well, but they get very nuanced with it. There is the natural authority of parents and tribal community or customs that are talked about. The counsel of men and women whose authority lay in the fact that they've got a position as a person, an elder in the community, or a wise person. Let's see. There's we've already talked about in the past Hokmah and wisdom and all of that. Okay, the 7 words, here they are. 7 words for fool: a naive person, a stupid person, an obstinate person, a crude person, a brutal or depraved person, an irrational to the point of madness type of person, and a foolish talker who's opinionated, insolent, arrogant, that sort of thing. So they have several of these words that can be helpful to do word studies on. What type of fool are they talking about? Knowledge is normally considered the apprehension of truth in one's mind. In other words, to gain what is true, so that you know it. Wisdom is to apply truth to your life. In other words, you don't just know the truth, you act upon it. And so that's what Proverbs is about. It's about how to act upon what is true. And so sages or wise men look at life and relationships and the world and how it works, and then they say, I can learn something from that. How do I apply that to my life? How do I apply the result of the hard work and consistent work of the ant, who just does a little bit at a time and collects and gathers? What can I learn from the foolishness of the sluggard? How to avoid the collapse and despair that comes when he hasn't worked and he's been lazy, and there is want and need and hunger in his life, and he has nothing because he didn't work. He wasn't studious. He wasn't a hard worker. So that's the type of thing that sages, wise men, wise women are doing. They're looking at the universal scope of creation, the relationships, and all of these things, and how does it fit with how I should live and act, not just in a secular term, but also in relationship with God and relationship with others. So some hermeneutical considerations in the book of Proverbs. Proverbs, these are general principles for studying Proverbs. Proverbs are often pointing beyond themselves. In other words, they're somewhat parabolic, they're figurative, pointing at something a little bit further beyond. Proverbs are intensely practical and theoretical, not theoretical. They're practical, and so theology at work. In other words, how do we then live it out? Proverbs are worded to be memorable. They're not technically precise. It's not. This is not a how-to manual for your life that will nail down all the, the gauges and dial in everything so that you've got a perfectly wise life. These are statements that are to be memorable and are not going to work in every situation, because just like we saw with the retribution principle in the book of Job, a righteous man, while he will be blessed and he will be taken care of, in general, he's going to be better off than a wicked man. We know that there are instances where the wicked do prosper and where the righteous do suffer for different reasons, but it's for God's purposes. So in any case, these are not promises in that sense, not technically precise. So Proverbs 15:19, the way of the lazy is like a hedge of thorns, but the path of the upright is a highway. Well, this is not concerned with the type of plants found in a lazy person's route along their way. So this is where it's saying it's parabolic. It's looking beyond just this truth that their image that they're presenting here. It's pointing to the principle that diligence is better than sloth. The portrayal of extreme devotion of the good wife described in Proverbs 31 is the result of an ordering. It's acrostic. In other words, you've got the lettering there. Each verse begins with a successive letter of the Hebrew alphabet, making it memorable and pleasing to the ear in Hebrew, but resulting in what could seem to some to be a pattern of life that's impossible to fulfill. We don't need to say that every woman must be this way, every good wife has to be this way, but these are the general things that you see, that the proverb, the writer of the proverb sees in godly women, good wives that are successful and helpful to their families and their husbands and that sort of thing. But it's in an acrostic order, so it's written to collect, just like Proverbs is written, to collect these different things together. Proverbs are not guarantees. Again, they're not promises, but poetic principles for right behavior. They are generally true in our immediate lives. They will be true in eternity. The promises for the righteous and the blessings that come for them will be true in eternity. But again, we have the issue of living here today and knowing that God might have us go through some trials to bring glory to himself for us, because it's best for us to learn about him, to go through those things. Nowhere does Proverbs then teach automatic success if you do these things. Again, the whole issue of Job and all these things we've been talking about. An example, Proverbs 22, verse 26 and 27. Do not be among those who give pledges, among those who become guarantors for debts. If you have nothing with which to pay, why should he take your bed from under you? Talking about the creditor. This doesn't mean we should never use credit or never go into debt, because there are certain things that are good to go into debt for, such as a capital good like a home or a car, where you need the vehicle in order to go to work, back and forth to work. The point is that debts should be taken on cautiously, and foreclosure, of course, can be painful, and Proverbs frames this truth in specific and narrow terms. The losing of the bed, losing of the garment, the cloak that they can take in surety, and that sort of thing. And there are plenty of other examples of these sorts of things. Let's see here. Some unique contributions. You've got character sketches of what is the talebearer like, the fool, the practical joker, the one that is a backbiter, the man of a wandering life, cheerfulness as a continual feast, the unsociable person who separates themselves for their own desires, the boaster, the ones who's seeking to be rich, the generous person. We've talked about the general principles. we should make sure that we recognize wisdom is from God. Note again that wisdom equals righteousness in Proverbs. The fool and his folly equal wickedness. So it's very black and white. Recognize the personifications that you see. Character sketches can be applied globally. Look at translations, other English translations than the one that you're used to clarify and clear Proverbs. That's a good place to start. Again, these Proverbs are how we daily walk. They're not strict doctrine. Seek deeper truths or meaning when the proverb, if it seems to contradict life, seek a deeper meaning. There may be something else going on. There is a chiastic structure in the book from that walks from 1 2 or 1 1 all the way to the center at 4:20 and 20 to 27, where speech to the son to be wise. That's the center of this chiasm, and it walks out to 9:18. So you have the wise man, the foolish woman, the fear of the Lord, hear instruction, the wise man receiving reproof, personified wisdom. Wisdom again is personified, treasure and commandments, wisdom, blessings, and that sort of thing, and all the way to the speech to the son in the middle. So in that section, 1 through 9:18, you've got this chiastic structure. So take a look at that. Generally, chapters 1 through 9 are Solomon. Of course, he writes it in that chiastic pattern. Solomon on wisdom. 10 through 24, chapters 10 through 24, statements and couplets known as the Proverbs as we know them. And the 25 through 31, the sayings of Lemuel. And, of course, chapter 31 at the end. Let's see if there are any. So, read the book of Proverbs. I would challenge you to read a chapter a day for a time. Read the whole book. And something that you can do that's very helpful, that I've done before, is to read one chapter of Proverbs and 5 chapters of Psalms. Try doing that. But as you do so, read the book of Psalms. When you read these together, you read chapter 1 of Proverbs, and then you read chapters 1, 6. You skip the chapters. If you're going to read 5 chapters of Proverbs, you start with chapter 1, chapter 31, chapter 61, chapter 91. You see what I'm saying? All the way through Proverbs. So you read 5, but you read through the Psalms in sections of 1 through 30, 31 through 60, 61 through 90, 91 through 120, 121 to 150. And so you're reading chapter 1 of Proverbs, and you're reading, again, chapter 1, or Psalm 1, Psalm 31, Psalm 61, Psalm 91, Psalm 121, and that sort of thing. And then so you're reading 6 chapters, 1 chapter of Proverbs, and 5 chapters of Psalms each day, or 5 Psalms each day. And it's interesting how they sort of go together. And the themes are very interesting and helpful. And so I try doing that. It's something that I've done in my devotions before, and it's a nice way to do that. But then, of course, the second day you'd read chapter 2 of Proverbs, chapter 2 or Psalm 2, Psalm 32, Psalm 62, 92, 122, that sort of thing. Okay, we'll see you next time with Ecclesiastes.